Hey everyone, welcome to The Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. Joining me on the couch, of course, is family counselor and my co-host, Alyson Schafer. Hey, The Parenting Show.
Great to be back.
Great to be back. For anybody who's just tuning in for the first time, this was a show that aired on Rogers TV. We began airing 12 years ago. We've had a few years hiatus, and we are back on the air. But this show is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We're talking about teens and tweens.
Right. So the essential elements of the parenting show are still there, which is a community service to have access to expert advice and for us to support one another in our parenting journey. But back in the day, a lot of those people that were watching our show when it first aired had little kids. They were at home. They were on mat leave. And of course, with this much time, we've now got people that have teenagers, and we didn't cover that topic as robustly over those years as we have the opportunity to today.
We have 8 episodes that are appearing, and certainly we are going to be talking about and have been talking about toddlers and preschoolers and all ages. But we're focusing today on not only teens and tweens, but things that maybe 10 years ago we weren't talking about.
The world has changed.
Times are changing.
The world has changed a lot in 10 years. Yeah.
So this is something that, I think every generation, right? My parents, or I would say to my parents, well, this wasn't the way that it was for you. This isn't how you grew up. And now my kids are saying the same thing. The difference is, I think the divide is much greater. That they are experiencing things that we had no idea. Social media, being online, social predators, all of those things that we just didn't really have to deal with as kids.
Well, to your point, as far back as Aristotle wrote that the next generation is just going to be the decline of mankind. So it is almost a tradition to think that the next generation is blowing it. And of course, This generation is saying, you gave us your sloppy global warming, and we got to clean up all your mess. So it's interesting times. But the rate of acceleration of social change is unprecedented, and so absolutely this is a unique time, and we can hardly keep up in terms of even knowing what it really means, and trying to react and respond to it in real time is very challenging for parents. But human beings and relationships are as old as evolutionary biology, and there's certain pieces that just don't change as quickly. So, for example, when we look at the teenage brain, there's an incredible developmental shift that happens in the adolescent brain. And we didn't know this until we started having functional MRIs and some new technology. But for the longest time, we thought that all growth in the brain finished in early childhood. And then we discovered there's this second growth explosion and rewiring, recircuiting of the brain, which is interesting because if you wonder what people will say, like, I had this perfectly reasonable kid, and all of a sudden they became like totally stupid. And honest to God, it is the truth. Their brain does not function as well. Their executive functioning is just not there. You could literally take a piece of yellow tape and just put under construction for part of the adolescent years. It's an important process that it goes through, but it also, speaking of changes in the brain, if you think about it from evolutionary biology, in adolescence, you're supposed to be leaving home. You're supposed to be leaving your primary source of security. And so if you're like a little bird and you're sitting on the edge of the nest and mama bird is saying, go ahead, fly, jump free fall out of this tree. Who's going to do that?
Right.
So isn't it great that we created this brain that really gets excited about risk-taking right as we go through adolescence, so that little bird will go, yeah, sure, so I'll do it, Unfortunately for parents, it means that you've got to plan on your child being both a risk taker and stupid at the same time, and our job is to make sure that they make it through that alive.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. So what I would say is, since they have this requirement to be this way, let's anticipate it and try to find healthy ways for kids to take risks and to feel that adrenaline rush and to be on that leading edge. But let's not make it around boneheaded, high-risk behaviors that could be lethal. And so things like, for example, a kid who sings in a coffee shop. That's like, right? Or trying out for a lead in a play. I mean, that's kind of traveling independently. My daughter went to Africa and built houses with Free the Children. That's kind of scary, getting on a plane and leaving your family, going to another country, never traveled before. That's the kind of risk-taking behavior that we want to have, so that they aren't like longboarding, holding onto the back of cars, like Back to the Future.
Well, which is actually current times,
That's
right? Okay, but there's a huge step between heading off to Africa, because at some point you've done your job well if your child can go off to Africa and be on their own, even though it's taking a big leap.
Yeah.
There's the little baby steps in between, like, you know, online bullying or overcoming, you know, something like that, not taking drugs when somebody offers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's little baby steps that are huge.
For sure. And so, you know, we talked about some basic discipline in one of the other episodes, and there are for sure foundational pieces that you want to happen in the early years, so that you've got a child who has some protective beliefs as they enter into the turmoil of adolescence. I can't stop the turmoil of adolescence, but what I want to make sure is that I've got a child that has these core protective beliefs. And one of them is that they feel a sense of belonging and embeddedness. You have to have a strong sense of being connected to your family and to adults that can give you guidance separate from peer-to-peer guidance. What we see far too often is that when kids hit adolescence, yes, they want more privacy, and that's appropriate that they have more privacy, but parents will also sort of see that as, oh, well, you know, they're with their peers, they don't want to hang around with me anyways. And this drift happens complicitly, where teens will actually say, I miss my parents. It's like they don't care about me anymore. And we throw our hands up thinking, well, I don't know, all the books tell us that they don't want to hang around with us anymore. And we don't make any effort to keep that relationship going. So we need to be a strong presence all through adolescence in our kids' life and have a strong relationship through that feeling of connection with our family. But the kids also have to feel capable, that they can manage themselves. And so feeling empowered and capable are things that can happen in earlier childhood through some autonomy and independence, and having responsibility for small things like carrying your own knapsack and getting yourself up in the morning. You know, you start those things early so that by the time you get to adolescence, they've had a taste of that, and they have a belief that they can manage what comes. The next one is feeling like you count, like you have a voice, that you're heard, that people listen to you, and that's why I'm such a big proponent in family counseling. So if you've got that child who has a good sense of self, and they have a good sense of family, that an unconditional, positive love, then when they go into adolescence, they aren't going to be looking so deeply, you know, as they experiment with new personas and new friendships. And I don't know, am I a goth? Am I an athlete? You know, they're going to experiment with stuff and try to find who they are unique from the family. And that's can be difficult for parents to watch, because what happened to my innocent little kid who now wants to go to school looking like a tart? That can be really difficult for us. But if we hold that space for them to do the experimentation, then they're more likely to kind of like a gutter ball in bowling. You know, they'll hit the gutter, but then they'll bounce back and correct. And by the time you take the long view, you know, 21, 22, you start going, there's the kid I remember. They're coming back. I mean, their essential personality is put in place by the time they're about 4 or 5.
Right.
But they do go through this sort of turmoil where they may feel unrecognizable to you. But hang in.
So we have been talking about having folks send in questions to us.
Yeah.
In talking about this show to somebody, they mentioned to me that everyone who is friends with their daughter, who is 14, vapes. Everybody. And I was shocked to hear this, because it's such a young age, and such a, you know, and that's something that is very new to parents now.
Yeah. Yeah, vaping wasn't around when I was around. Of course, we all
You're still around. You're still
I'm
here.
still around. I'm here. Yeah, so we have to appreciate that children, teens and tweens, and can I just clarify, there's so much change developmentally that happens in adolescence that you can't lump them all together. That right. Like what is happening for a 9 to 11-year-old is not the same as what's happening to a 12 to 14-year. You know, so it's more granular. There is early, middle, and late adolescence. They're very different developmental stages. And things do come into adolescent life much earlier than parents anticipate, and it tends to shock them. And your example of vaping at 14, who knew? But we have to appreciate that there are things that are going on in their life that inform them about what should be the cultural behavioral norms. And if you're a parent, you need to study with curiosity, not judgment, like you are a cultural anthropologist. You need to think about, imagine if I arrived from a different planet and I was plopped into the middle of this. What do these people do? What interesting creatures? They vape and they tattoo and pierce and whatever. And I think to learn about the world that your child is being raised in is going to be different depending on your culture, depending on which part of the country you're in, whether you're urban or rural. The challenges, if you're on a farm in northern Manitoba, is going to be different than you're in the suburbs of Toronto.
Right.
So, but you have to get curious about it. And ways to do that are listen to their music, read the books that they're reading, watch the television shows, that know which social platforms they're on, and be there as an observer, because that's going to be the thing that says, wow, there's a tremendous amount of marketing that says vaping is in. And so then I think we talk to our kids and say, hey, say, are you vaping? If I catch you vaping, that's. But if you instead come and say, "Hey, are kids? Have you seen vaping at your school? Or are kids starting?" If you ask about their cohort, they're much more likely to report about trends that are happening in their age group than disclosure on their own behavior. But they're like, "Oh yeah, people are starting to vape." So what do you think that's about? See, if you're curious about it, you're kind of asking them to educate you. Mm-hmm. And they like that. They don't want to be told, but they're quite happy to educate.
Well, and the key is not to be angry
at the response,
right?
Well, they'll stop talking. That will shut down communication if you come across as angry. You can be concerned. Mm-hmm. You can share your concerns. But I think even though we've been saying that the whole premise of the parenting show and the information that I'm giving is based on that democratic style, that Adlerian style of parenting, I also want parents to know that our style of relating to our child within the democratic mode needs to change. So when your kids were little and you were being majorly a disciplinarian, socializing them, mm-hmm. we were educators. Shoes go here, forks go there, comb your hair, this is how we live. By the time you start getting into adolescence, you're coaching your kid. They don't want to know what you know. They want you to know what they know. So we need to instead say, well, you've got the big MacGyver brain that's exploding and, you tell me, help me understand, so let me think about that. So you've got a project due next Tuesday, but you think you're going to get it done in 4 hours on, Friday morning before school. Mm-hmm. So talk to me how you think that's going to work out,
Right.
So I don't want to say you're crazy, you're not giving yourself enough time for that project. I want to help them process. So it's a switch in the role. You're coaching, not educating. And then eventually, as they get into later adolescence and young adulthood, then hopefully if you've been a good coach and you've kept the relationship close, then they will come to you as sage counsel. They will actually come to you for your advice. I don't know, do you think I should break up with him? Do you think I should go to this college or that college? I think I should drop my minor. What do you think? And I want to have that kind of relationship where I'm still considered an expert in their life that has an opinion that they find trustworthy.
Right, and value.
And value. And so those 3 stages. If you're still trying to educate your teens when you should be in coaching mode, they'll just drop you as a
confidant.
Yeah. And if you try to be controlling, I use the metaphor of an airplane. They need to be driving the plane. You want to be the co-pilot. Right? You can be like, I think we're going into the mountain. We're going into the mountain. We might want to think about lifting. But if you try to jump in when things start going bad and say, you're not driving right, I'm going to take control.
Give me the wheel.
They are going to hit the ejector seat and boop, you're going to be out of the plane, and then you have no opportunity to be on the journey, to be a sense of safety and security and advisory for them.
Nice analogy. I love that.
Boop. Everyone's going to get a little button now. Oh, I'm getting popped from the plane. I got to whoop. Yeah. We can't take control. It's frightening. It can be frightening, but
we're skimming topics. Yeah. Certainly, everything is available on your website. Right?
Yes, I've got lots of resources on my website, and through my website, you'll see links through to my YouTube channels and other videos on the topic, other books on the topic, events and workshops and things like that are all on AlysonSchafer.com.
So, some issues that we're talking about during this show are new. There's some that stand the test of time, and this is one of them I think a lot of people will feel the pain of. My daughter is constantly putting herself down of how she looks. I'm too fat, my hair's too straight, I hate my eyebrows. How do parents deal with this? How do they get them to love themselves.
So I think first we have to pay attention to the messages that we send ourselves to our kids. And it's not just girls, can I say. Boys are just as obsessed with having the six-pack ab, which is pretty discouraging because actually you have to finish your growth height-wise before you can build bulk. So you got all these kids like, it doesn't matter how many sit-ups, it ain't gonna happen yet, right? There is a developmental piece. But there's many things that we say about like, oh, I gotta go on a diet, or does this look good on me? Or we are constantly saying things that would inform our children that looks matter, and that one way of looking is better than another way of looking. And they're subtle and they're subliminal. But so first I would say is we got to watch, model good behavior, watch the messaging that we're sending. And then we also have to interpret for them what they're seeing. They don't understand marketing. They don't know that things have been photoshopped. They don't know that things are a trend where, in one culture, the thigh gap might be the big thing and every girl wants to have the thigh gap. And in other cultures, actually having a larger bottom half actually means that you're wealthy and you come from a good family, and that's a sign of robustness, and that's sexy in other cultures, and that we're told that we should confine to this small little beauty norm. And I think to point our kids towards a lot of the things like the Dove Self-esteem campaign and whatnot, where they really try to tackle changing the messaging that's coming from movies, advertisements that say we're supposed to look a small amount away. And again, those foundational pieces in childhood, the more you've already got a good sense of self-esteem, when you hit adolescence and your body starts to change and your voice drops and acne comes and boobs pop out and you're like, it is like being hijacked, and it happens pretty quickly. If they have a greater sense of their own self-love from childhood, that's going to help them weather that storm more easily.
And I know that we've talked about this, is complimenting. Is that part of the answer? You are beautiful. You are this. You are that. I know sometimes it's much better to use the words capable, and you can handle it, and changing your words, not just how you talk about yourself, but how you talk to them.
Yeah. So I try. You don't want to find value in yourself for something that is out of your control. So if you are valued for being a prized beauty and then you get into a car accident and have a disfiguring scar in your face, then you've now made your worth contingent on something that is out of your control. Right. So I want worth to come from something that you can control, something that you do, something that you contribute. Now, I would say that many times when a child beats themselves up and says like, oh, I'm so stupid or I'm so ugly, parents want, the natural tendency is to say, no, you're so smart, you're so beautiful. And first of all, I think often the kid just thinks you're just placating them and they don't really believe you anyways. But in a sense, what you're really doing is saying there is a judgment, there is a ruler, but you're at the high end of the ruler, not the low end of the ruler. But you're still reinforcing that you're being judged. We're just saying you're being judged positively. So, I would prefer if we just try to get rid of qualities of judgment overall. And so, first of all, I would honor, like, I'm so sorry that you're feeling so down on yourself. You were really hard on yourself. You're really picking on yourself. I would always validate feelings first. It's not nice when you're not comfortable in your body. Well, it's not nice when you have this belief about yourself that you're stupid. I would always validate it. And then I might give them a correction of distorted thinking and say, hey, you know what? I kind of see it differently. Are you? And I like to ask sometimes, especially with teenagers, can I tell you how I think about that? And if they say no, it's like, okay, enough said. But it's just very polite to ask before you share. It's honoring of them. Are you curious? You want to hear how I think about that? Yeah. I also think talking about your own journey, your own struggles through adolescence and things that you've done. I had a weight problem when I was in adolescence, and I felt that my parents really it did not help me, and I would have liked a little support around that. And I'm sure at the time they were thinking like, oh, we don't want to participate in creating body image ideals or whatever. But actually, it's like, yeah, but you could have helped a little.
Right?
Like the doctor said, I should lose some weight. You could have pitched in for some cottage cheese. Sorry, Mom and Dad. Yeah. Rest in peace. You always forgive your parents when you raise your own kids, right? You're like, how did they do it?
Yes, yes.
We all get to make our own mistakes. I'm sure I'm making mistakes with my kids, and they'll do better with theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about money?
Yes, please. Oh, please, can we talk about money? Now, quite
Can I borrow $5?
You know, I do a lot of work in family counseling. I do a lot of work with workshops. I've done work with Bank of Montreal, Bank of Canada. You know, we have a real problem with if the next generation handles money the way we handle money, we will bankrupt this country. You know, with that, honestly, we're on a bad trajectory of bad financial literacy skills. And I think one of the problems is for parents is to the same problem we talked about in other shows where we have such a hard time saying no into emotionality, and we end up rescuing our kids all the time. So rather than learning to be financially responsible, they become quite demanding, and we somehow cherish our children, and frankly, we financially spoil them. I'll give you one example just in terms of cultural learning. How many bedroom sets did you have as a kid growing up?
Like an actual bedroom?
Yeah, like how many times did you redecorate your bedroom?
One. We painted a lot. I moved a lot.
Okay.
But,
yes.
But one.
Yeah. So, I mean, now the thing is, oh, you know, you have to have the baby room, and then you have the toddler room, and then you have this room, and then now, I mean, I can't believe how, just a simple example. So kids move out to university, and they think that they're going to move into a condominium with all new fancy furniture. And they're, you know, whereas when I moved out of the house, I used cardboard boxes as end tables. You know, I took public transit. I didn't expect my parents to get me a car. So there is a spending expectation for what life is supposed to be like for our newly launched kids, and they can't maintain it. They can't maintain it. So I think we have to start early with our financial literacy. And like with my kids, for example, I started with letting my kids take the money from their own garage sale. So if they, you know, I would have a garage sale, but they could set up their own table. So any of their toys, anything that they weren't using anymore, they could sell it, and they could keep that money. And that has gone all the way through. I've had my kids on allowance. I've had them on a budget. I've never rescued them from that. I've shown them now the joys of the secondhand economy. Get an account on Kijiji. Look at, you can buy that new for this amount of money, or you can buy it gently used and save all that money, and then you can ombre your hair, which apparently costs $300. But if we keep stepping in every time they're short on money, there is no reason for kids to learn the value of money and budget. So I think it's important to say, you order in from Swiss Chalet, it's $30. Your rotisserie chicken is 10. Buying a raw chicken is 7, and you can throw it in the oven, it's done in an hour. So I think as parents, we do need to spend more time on financial literacy, way less time rescuing our kids, and giving them those life skills to save money. And whether that's setting up the Kijiji, learning how to cook, so that they can do things on their own independently, rather than run into the bank of mom and dad.
But you can't keep up with the Joneses.
We keep up with the Joneses. That's the problem.
Yes.
Like, look at the credit card debt of the parents. And then we pass it on to our kids and, well, you know, they're all getting Roots jackets for Christmas. I better buy one. I don't want to be the parent who didn't do that. Well, everyone goes to Florida for Christmas. We can't afford it, but... So I think we do a lot of emotional protecting of our kids by saying, you know, well, if everyone's got the new iPhone, I don't want my kid to be left behind. Yes. Or I don't want the whining. Didn't we talk about the whining? The whining,
yes. The whining never ends.
Yeah. I think to have a budget, to stay within a budget, to practice making money mistakes before kids head off to college, because the mistakes just get bigger.
Sarah sent in an email, so I want to read that before we have about 4 minutes. Yeah. How do parents know when to start stepping back and letting kids be responsible for their schoolwork? Our son is in grade 10. We ask what he has for homework, if he has upcoming assignments and tests, but this is the first year we haven't got much from his teachers, so we can support him at home. He has had challenges with organization and time management in past years. Is it the expectation that by grade 10 the students are on their own? I know we touched on this a little bit, just with, you know, calendaring out, if that's a word, the schoolwork, but how much responsibility? I know how much you love homework.
Yeah, right. So, and don't like homework. But again, taking the long view, this is somebody who is not going to have the benefit of a parent with them when they go to college or university if they're going to do education beyond. So now you get a couple of years for this child to learn the skills that they need to be autonomous and self-directed. Do they have it all by grade 10? Well, she says he's not great in this area, but he's never going to be great in this area if he doesn't get an opportunity to practice and flex it, which means making mistakes, which means handing things in late and losing some marks because of it. So I would, to the point of earlier of saying, our approach. We want to coach. So you might check in, hey, just checking in on what do you need in order to keep yourself organized. And for some people that might be an agenda. For some people that might be putting it on their Wonder List or phone system or whatever it might be. I don't want to be the one that prompts you, but I might say, how will you self-prompt yourself? Or I might say, what is your plan? What is your plan for this project? What is your plan for getting your homework done tonight? And then I might say, hey, we got to live by the plan. We had a plan. Got to implement the plan. So I might do that. But honestly, the more you are present and in their business, the less responsibility that they will take. So what we say is very responsible parents raise irresponsible children because they perceive you as still looking after it for them. And so, we can't be that permanent safety net in that way. So coach them towards creating self-sustaining structures so that they can manage it on their own and let them fail. Let them make mistakes and learn in grade 10 so that they don't learn it by dropping out when they come home for Thanksgiving at First Year University, saying, I didn't do it. I didn't do any of my assignments.
Because failing a test is not the end of the world.
No.
Because it is a logical, natural consequences fall from not doing your homework, not having time management, those types of things.
And the kids learn from mistakes. You can't evolve. We want to make mistakes not happen, but those are learning opportunities, powerful learning opportunities. And so allow those mistakes to happen so that they can experience, I don't want that to go a second time.
Right.
That's where the growth comes.
Can you believe we're at the end of the show?
Wow.
I know. Learning opportunities for parents exist on your website.
Yep.
Lots of resources.
I've got a whole resource page with different books and links, as well as an event page for workshops in the area, other speakers in the area. So check all that out.
Perfect. And as well, you have information about your books.
Yes, my
best-selling author.
My books are there too. Yep. And I also I do regular Facebook Lives. And so if people felt that they didn't get their questions answered and they want to continue the conversation, they can post comments. They can join a Facebook Live. My e-newsletter sends you an e-blast and lets you know what's upcoming in the month ahead. I
know it's so difficult to, you hear other people's questions and go, yes, that's exactly like me, but you also want to have your spin, your spin on it.
Each kid is different.
Yeah. I know. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Tune into the Parenting Show. We love to be able to chat with you about discipline and potty training and teens and tweens and all those things, or rogerstv.com for more information about the show. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.